So welcome guys. In today's episode, we have with us Agnius, and he is currently COO at Definra. Agnius, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience? And first of all, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me on this podcast. And my name is Agnius, and I run a company and an agency basically that provides various professional business services. A couple of them. One of them, where I'm mostly focused on, is providing business process improvement consultancy and process automation consultancy, training, and custom development services, mainly using the Power Platform by Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Okay. With that, if I were to ask you about a little bit of your early background, so you were accountant, and how did you get into RPA at first, please?
Yeah, so I actually got educated. My formal education is in finance and accounting, so that's where I got my first job on as well. I was an accountant for a few years, various roles in accounting, and then I was working in a global business center for a multinational company that was actually located here in my hometown. So I was employed in there and was just as I was moving through different positions, I would usually do sort of minor automation kinds of tasks, but usually using Excel and VBA. At that point, I wasn't really aware of RPA. So I would just do things where, it made sense to automate some stuff, because obviously there's a lot of, boring tasks in accounting. So I try to improve my own daily job and also that of my colleagues. Mm-hmm. And my boss at that time noticed that I was kind of interested in trying to streamline and improve those processes and also try to automate them. And their boss actually had this idea of trying to apply RPA in their company. This was back in 2017, I think, in the global organization. Mm-hmm. And they thought they'd start with the global business center, because of the accounting tasks actually having a lot of room for automation. So they did that. And because I was kind of the obvious choice at that point, apart from hiring someone external, I seemed like the best pick to try it out initially internally. And at that point, we didn't really have a lot of people externally that we could actually hire. It wasn't really as popular here in Lithuania. So there weren't that many people we could hire. So they thought that, they'll just train me in-house. And they included me in the vendor selection process. And then, when we actually selected the vendor, I got some training from the vendor, but that was just like a single day training session where we tried building a flow. And then I was on my own and essentially learned everything as I went. So I did that for a bit over a year, then started, because I've automated most of my own job, then I started freelancing a bit on the side, which eventually led to me opening my own company and starting to do it.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I mean, a person who's coming from a non-automation or a non-technical background, I would say, you were like, as part of your job, you were doing accounting, right? And from there, you moved to RPA and automation space, and then you saw an opportunity to build your own stuff with that.
Yeah, well, I would have to actually note that I did, I don't have a formal education in IT or anything else like that, but I was actually already getting bored by accounting a couple of years into the job, and I was already actively seeking, possibilities to reskill myself. So I did take a lot of courses online in Coursera, Udemy, and similar portals at that point were as whatever I could get. And I did take quite a few computer science courses. I learned to do Python programming to an extent, at least. I've learned a bit of some, scripting in VB as well because of VBA things in Excel that I was doing. So I kind of had a general understanding of computer science before I started doing RPA, and that helped me start, off with a better note. I think it reduced the time I needed to learn it. So it would definitely be easier to learn RPA for a person who does actually have a tech background, but people can still reskill it, if they're interested and if they want to, then it's obviously possible.
Yeah. Great. So, I mean, what were your challenges when you transitioned from your accounting job or accounting skills to RPA or automation skills? Why I'm asking this is there are many people out there who want to switch their career and move to automation, right? So, yeah, there will be some takeaways, some learnings from your experience.
Yeah, well, Like I said, I did already have a little bit of learning done in terms of computer science. So I had a general understanding of how actually computer programs run, on how to implement some structures like loops and conditional statements and all of those things. These sometimes have will cause difficulties to some people. I know some complete beginners who come from a non-tech background. They don't really understand how a loop works, for instance, or what's the difference between a for each loop and a do until loop or something like that. So these sorts of things, they might be difficult to understand to some people who don't even have a basic background or understanding. And I thankfully already had that, so that made things a little easier. What I was lacking at the very beginning was understanding of the IT infrastructure and all of that stuff. How to actually set up and maintain machines and environments in those machines, and best practices and so on. What we started working with, and the vendor we chose at that point was called Softomotive. It was later acquired by Microsoft in 2020. They had their own tool. They had a couple, actually. One was bin automation, which was specifically designed for RPA on a single machine, like a single desktop, and the other one called Process Robot was had more of an enterprise level kind of a thing. And as I was working with those, they did not really have, similarly to how Power Automate Desktop does not have it at the moment still, they did not have a built-in out-of-the-box functionality for error handling, logging, and all of that stuff. In UiPath has the RE framework, that kind of covers most of those things. But bin automation back in the day, or Power Automate Desktop, doesn't really have that. And so for a beginner who doesn't really know how to do that, there is a lot of learning to do, and I didn't really have a mentor or anyone to actually learn from. And there wasn't a very active community on Softomotive's tools at that point. It was a less popular tool at that point. So had to learn a lot of things by just trying and making a lot of mistakes and so on. So at this point, I would say that anyone wanting to reskill and actually start their careers in an RPA job, or using any of the RPA tools, I'd say that they could benefit a lot from the fact that there is an actual community for most of them, at least the most popular ones, and you can actually learn a lot from the community members, which is something I didn't have at that point.
That's correct. So now it's all matured. Like the community is pretty well matured for at least top 5 RPA enterprise tools, so they can definitely get benefit out of that.
Yes, and people can actively ask questions, but they can also find a lot of resources on how to do things, and what are the best practices for doing certain things, even if they're not natively available within the tool. For instance, like I mentioned in Power Automate Desktop, there's no framework for handling errors, but there's plenty of resources online where you can find on how to actually do that properly. So that's a thing that's a lot easier to learn and start doing properly right away.
Yeah. With that, moving on to the next segment, I would like to ask you about, you have experience in setting up the financial shared service, right? Financial shared service center in one of your previous organization or current organization, maybe. So what were the challenges like you faced while doing that, and how did RPA benefit it over here?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I actually worked in an organization that was a certain center like that. So I called it a global business services, but the idea was that there was finance and accounting services and also some IT in there that was just centralized in a single location. So I worked in a center like that initially myself. I saw the structure, the way work was organized, and how much can actually be automated by using RPA. And then the fact that I started my own company that provides services like that was just basically a matter of luck and me knowing certain people personally. So certain people actually needed these sorts of services. They knew me as a colleague, they knew me as a professional, and they also heard that I have a company of my own. By that point, I had already established a company for doing RPA and process improvement consultancy, but it was a family business where my wife also joined the company, and she was focusing on doing actually accounting services to local customers in Lithuania. So someone actually heard that I've got an accounting company. It really wasn't an accounting company at that point, but they called me and they asked me on whether we could set up a team for them to actually do this. So I own a shared service center or a global business services center for several customers that are actually external, but we actually outsource teams of people to these companies where they actually want a center like that, but they don't really want to establish a company themselves in an office. So we do that, and we have over the years we have actually automated quite a few processes in there for our clients. They kind of, they're kind of aimed at the client so that they actually get their services faster and higher quality, lower error rates and so on. But we don't really kind of charge them for the development or maintenance, because in reality it's saving time for my own people who are just working on the tasks for the client. So I'm actually kind of automating things for my own team so that I can have maybe less people, or they don't need to work overnight, or overtime. They're more efficient and so on. So that's the idea. And I have, because of my own background in accounting, I do actually know quite a bit about accounting processes. So it made it easy to find candidates for what can actually be automated in a center like this. So we did actually build quite a few flows just for the purpose of saving time and improving efficiency.
Yeah, so basically you have established yourself as a domain authority in finance, and then you are kind of automate those stuff, and the in and out of those processes.
Yes, because I have actually personally performed some of them myself in the past, maybe not all of them, but I have personally done quite a few. And then I've also, when we've established the company, I was participating in the entire, process transfer procedure. So I am familiar with the processes because that's interesting to me. I like improving processes. It's not only automating. Automating is not really that much of a passion to me, actually. My passion is improving stuff, improving processes, making them more efficient. And automation is just one of the tools in there. So I actually gone through most of those processes, reviewed them, tried to make them as efficient as possible before we applied automation.
Yeah, that's amazing to know. And you are currently playing a role of a COO. So are you a co-founder, or it's entirely single founded company?
No, I'm a co-founder. There's 3 people in the company who founded the company. It's still a family business. All 3 of us are family members. I just went with a COO title because we just kind of split the titles and then that's it. But when it comes to actually running the company and making decisions, we usually either participate equally, and so I usually run the day-to-day operations. That's what COO.
Yeah, I have kept that segment. I'll be coming back to you on this, on the CEO. What are your day-to-day activities and all? So moving on to the next question, which is about the RPA models. Like, how did you approach in developing the RPA model for client, and what were the key considerations during this process?
Yeah. Okay. So we actually were working on rebranding our business a couple of years ago, and we had a brand called RoboVirgin, which we created specifically targeting clients who are completely new in RPA, or at least they've tried but failed, so they don't have anything that's actually working for them. And that's why we had the word virgin in it. The slogan was that we'll help businesses lose their RPA virginity.
That is sorry to interrupt you, but that is really cool name. I mean, RoboVirgin.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Sounds cool, and I liked the brand, but unfortunately, we were actually opposed by the Virgin Group. They said that we can't really hold the word Virgin in our brand because they want to own the word. But anyway, our business kind of also switched like a year ago to not only targeting businesses who have no RPA in there. We also now work with clients that already have some RPA in their business and they're working fine, but they just need some help, as in maybe helping them fix their stuff or build something else when they don't have enough hands in house, or if they're switching from a different vendor or whatever they're doing. We don't work with these virgins anymore. So we actually stopped using that brand as well. But the original idea was that when it comes to clients that do not have anything yet, we would usually try to, that there's an approach to that some bigger vendors usually suggest, is that you would need to do a complete overview of all of your processes first, then do a sort of a analysis of all of them, then do a list of best candidates, rank them by the benefits available, build a roadmap and so on, and you would eventually end up with a paper document, tens of pages long, pay several tens of thousands of dollars for the document, but have no bots in production yet. And that would usually take several months to do. So that doesn't really work with small and mid-sized businesses, for sure. It doesn't really work with larger companies either. When they just want to start something, the best way we found that works is where we find the sort of, biggest pain point, or a couple of biggest pain points, the low-hanging fruits. We find them, we review the process, and then we improve the process as much as possible. We make it as efficient as possible before we try automating them. Then, or in some cases, we even eliminate the process completely, because when we review it, we notice that it's not even necessary, but they're just doing it because they've been doing it for decades and they don't really know that it's irrelevant anymore. But anyway, so we improve the process as much as possible. If by then it still needs automating, or if it makes sense automating, then we apply automation. Or if it doesn't, then we move on to the next one. But when we do this to 2 or 3 processes, internal marketing within the organization phases, but it's just word of mouth thing that spreads, people who are happy with the new way of working, they spread the word around the organization. And then people come to us with their own ideas of what to do next. And that works much better than doing a sort of an overall overview initially, because first of all, we get the benefits sooner. We get to work quicker. So we pick out a couple of processes, and we could have bots in production within a couple of months. So we're actually making progress much sooner, and the client actually gets the benefit right away. They can actually get ROI quite quickly. The return on their investment is much quicker, and they don't pay for a document being produced, without actually gaining anything from it. So that has worked out very well every single time we've implemented this, regardless of how large or small the organization is. And it actually works a lot better, and most mid-sized organizations and smaller organizations actually really like this approach, because they don't even have the budget of actually doing this overview of all of their processes. I do know that most process consultants will usually say that you still need to map all of their processes, you still need to have an overview of all of them, but that eventually is the output of all of it. It's just that we do it in smaller steps, but we still cover everything eventually. And the businesses usually get their benefits sooner in iterations, meaning that they start saving money sooner, and so they have they can actually have a budget for the next project afterwards.
Okay, so these, this is your entire model. And if I may ask, what is your, how do you approach clients, or how do you approach to the new clients, basically, for their automations?
Well, to be honest, I don't really do a lot of, cold sales, and we don't do that much of kind of approaching clients ourselves. What I do is I speak at events, I post content on LinkedIn, I appear on, in the news every now and then, and so on. We kind of do this marketing. Most of it is just, marketing stuff that kind of works in a way where I showcase our competencies, because when I speak in tech events as well to actual developers, where I teach them. I speak non-tech events, I'm actually speaking in events aimed at business leaders or CFOs and so on. So where they just, it's a more of a generic topic about how RPA can help them, automate their business processes. And then after seeing me in events like that, they come to me asking for some help. Also participate in communities, and for instance, in the Power Platform community, the forums, I'm one of the most active people there when it comes to Power Automate, or the I Love Automation Discord server, which is, aimed at all of the RPA tools available, or most of them. I'm also one of the most active people there as well. So people see me helping others, and then, they usually, approach me for some consultancy. And that's the way it starts usually. So it's not really a cold approach. From my point, it's usually people noticing me, and they, kind of see that I am competent and I can actually help. And then when they actually need some help, they come to me asking. So that makes it easier for me to sell the service. But it's not that I do sales on a daily basis.
Okay, so it's like you speak on certain events, conferences, and then try to help people contribute to the community, and then the work flows in your direction.
They basically find me via my activities on various mediums, but usually in social media as well. I'm trying to be quite active on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has actually worked out quite well for me in regards to getting clients because of the content I share.
Amazing. So now coming back to the next segment is like, can you please share your more details about your role as a CEO at your current company? What a day in a life of a CEO looks like?
Okay, so the thing is, the team that does automation in our company is at this point is still quite small. So even though I would prefer only doing consultancy myself in terms of process improvement and automation, I also do some development as well with Power Automate. So I'm still, I'd say that I'm mostly working as a senior consultant and senior developer. The COO role just means that I also, if a team member or an employee actually needs some help or has some issues as well, they might also come to me asking for help. But those are usually rare because we've already streamlined our internal processes in a way that they work quite well. We've got team leaders in the shared service center, so they usually can work without me in most cases. So most of my days are actually spent on consulting clients, when they need help, or speaking to new clients as well. Sort of consultancy hours of just introducing myself when they come on, as leads. Then consultancy in terms of actually providing consultancy services to existing clients when they need some help on how to do something, on how to improve their process, or whether or not something is possible to do via RPA, that sort of consultancy. Then I do some development, maybe not every day, but 3 out of 5 days a week, I do some development in Power Automate. It helps me keep my own skills sharp, but also, it's because we actually fully busy with orders from clients. And then I also occasionally, which is also part of my work, is speaking in events and teaching people. Actually, I'm actually doing a module in a local university now this semester. So it's almost done, but it's probably going to be a longer term kind of a thing with the university, because they've got a program on digitizing business processes where RPA is one of the topics they cover, and they've asked me to cover Power Automate. So I'm doing that. This is the first time we're doing it this semester, but we'll probably be continuing to do that as well. So that's also part of my work. I'm basically training people to use Power Automate, possible future employees of mine as well. So these are the major tasks that I do, and then once or twice a week or something, maybe an employee might ask me for some help, for some support, for some just a question or something like that. So that's just that's the part of me being a chief operating officer and handling day-to-day operations. But actually, I'd say that 90% of my work is actually being a senior consultant and senior developer.
Okay. And what is the size of your current company in terms of employee strength?
We're like 15 people right now, excluding a few people that are on maternity leave as well. So that's more or less
15 to 20, we can consider.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I got to know that's why the Definra only works on Power Automate or Power Platform suite, like Power Automate in RPA and Power BI dashboard.
Yeah. So, as mentioned, I initially started my RPA career using Softomatic tools, using Bin Automation and Power and Process Robot. And at that point, I did actually do a pretty extensive research into other tools as well. I did touch on most of the, most popular tools at that point in 2017. Some of the tools I've analyzed at that point no longer exist actually this day. But anyway, so I've tried out most of them. We, at my former organization, figured that Softomatic and their tools actually fit our needs the best. The main reasons for that at that point was that it was a very powerful tool, but it was actually also quite significantly cheaper than the alternatives. We, like or Automation Anywhere or something like that. So, and then, when I've become a developer, I think I was actually the only person doing it in Lithuania using these tools at that point. And I've learned it. And then, when I started freelancing, it seemed to me that it just really did actually work, because the tools were very powerful. They had most of the features of the others as well. They were just, probably being cheaper because they were less popular, because Softomotive wasn't as well known as UiPath, for instance. And that's why they had to kind of try to win the market by being cheaper. So I just stuck with that because it actually worked with me. I was able to sell that to my customers because the pricing was very reasonable while it was still very powerful. And then in 2020, Microsoft acquired Softomotive, and they, switched their tools into Power Automate desktop, and then built, added it to the entire Power Platform. And I kind of realized that this was a very, it was the right choice that I made to stick with Softomotive because, when Microsoft acquired it, our marketing efforts just, exploded. It became much easier to actually sell it when a name like Microsoft is behind it. And that, the problem previously that when I was selling bin automation, for instance, to customers, while it was cheaper and while I was actually very competent, some clients were hesitant, mainly because they didn't know the name that much, and also because I had no competitors in the local market. And that if they didn't like me for whatever reason, they wouldn't have anyone to fall back on. While for instance, the UiPath had at least a few consultancies local. So that was an issue. But then when Microsoft acquired it, suddenly plenty of other companies who were already working with the Power Platform, like doing analytics using Power BI or doing apps using Power Apps or whatever they were doing, they jumped on the bandwagon to use Power Automate as well because they saw the potential. While what I did was, obviously I also had to expand our own skill set. Then when Power Automate became a part of the Power Platform, we would also occasionally get some requests to build an app or a BI dashboard. But at that point, that's just something we learned along the way. So, but the way I see it is that I had actually considered adding a couple of other tools to our portfolio a couple of times over the years, but every time I looked into the idea, I would just see no actual reason why I would potentially offer a new client to go with a different tool than Power Automate. There is no reason why I would consider selling another tool. The only reason being that I could earn a larger commission on the sale, obviously, because I don't earn a lot on selling Microsoft licenses. But that's not really my target. My target is to just get the best possible product to my client and then earn on the services, not on the licenses. So I don't see why I would ever sell UiPath to anyone. The only cases that I've seen where clients who already use a certain tool and come to me for help, and then I just kind of say, okay, we don't work with that. I can't really help you. So I've had, 10, maybe up to 20 clients or leads like that over the few years where I just, refer them to someone else instead because I couldn't help them. But that's really not that huge of a market anyway. I feel like the Power Platform is essentially, if it's not the best yet, it's on the way to become the best tool in there. So I'm confident in using it. And the thing I like is the fact that most of my competitors are actually companies who maybe are very experienced in Power Apps or Power BI or something like that, but they've only started doing Power Automate since 2020, and I'm way ahead of them. I can confidently say that I'm the most experienced Power Automate developer in Lithuania and one of the best in globally.
The early bird advantage, that's what we call it.
Yeah.
Since you have the bin automation experience, and from there onwards, it's built on top of that as it's been acquired by Microsoft.
Yeah.
So but do you see anything like any challenge which cannot be accomplished or which cannot be built in using Power Automate, and that can be done via the competitors like UiPath or Automation? Have you come across any such scenario?
I haven't found anything that couldn't be done using Power Automate, but I have, obviously there are things in which UiPath, for instance, is more mature, right? So they've got the whole framework thing out of the box, right? So that's a nice thing. They have their queuing functionality. The work queues is more advanced by this point, and the orchestration thing. It is better to a point where, because Power Automate is a little immature in that regard, at least at this point, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be done using Power Automate. It just means that it requires more effort on the developer part. For instance, Power Automate only added work queues as a feature earlier this year, and then we've actually been doing queues since I don't know when, 2018 probably. So we've just built our own SQL database, a standardized SQL database that we deploy to a customer when we want it. It can be done as a SQL Server, as a PostgreSQL database, or a SQLite for those that's just a very simple implementations. So we've got that, and it takes us less than an hour to deploy that now to a new customer. It's pretty straightforward because we have standardized and polished it. But obviously, it took us days, if not months, to actually make it work initially. But once we've done it, we now can easily use it. So that's a thing that when you're starting from scratch with Power Automate, you need to build your own framework or get it built by someone else. But when it's done, then it's quite easy to use it. So
yeah, but eventually, like for every other RPA platform, it's the same story. Going down the line, there would be things which can be like there would be reusable components in Power Platform as well, or Power Automate as well, which can be integrated within the solutions. But yeah, it will get there. But that doesn't mean that the thing cannot be achievable, or any of the automation is not achievable. You didn't find any of such use cases till now, right?
No, I haven't.
Okay, makes sense. How do you see Power Automate from a job opportunity perspective compared to other major RPA platforms?
Well, I can't really speak of this globally. I don't know every market out there, but as far as I've seen, at least in Europe, it seems like Power Automate has become more and more popular since, I don't know, maybe not right away in 2020 when Microsoft acquired Softomotive, but since 2021, 2022, early 2022, it's been growing in popularity quite significantly, and the community has been expanding. So I can also see quite a few job opportunities available in my own market as well. There's quite a few companies looking for Power Automate developers, or Power Platform developers for that matter, which also include Power Automate. So that does actually work quite well. While the market in here was basically dominated by UiPath a couple of years ago, we now have, I think we have more companies doing Power Automate now than UiPath. So at least consultancy companies, agency companies providing services. I can't
is cost? Sorry to interrupt. Is cost a factor there? Like people shifting towards?
Probably, but at least when it comes to the businesses actually using it, I would assume that the cost is one of the factors. The other is probably the fact that a lot of companies are already using Microsoft products. It's the integrations available are
it's just adding one piece into their entire Microsoft ecosystem, because all the system and everything they already have those licenses.
Yeah, exactly. So and Microsoft ERP systems are quite popular in Europe. The finance and operations and the Business Central and also the CRM systems and all of the other systems that Microsoft actually offers. They're quite popular here. So and they also, to some extent, at least, they include some Power Automate licensing, at least for cloud flows. So that's also a way of promoting it, and then maybe hoping that people will also go premium when they see that this is that could be very useful to them. So I think that's also a major factor. When it comes to people trying to do it, I think it's also a bit, well, at least it seems from the first view, it seems a bit easier to learn. It seems more citizen developer friendly. The interface itself, I mean. Because the other alternatives, well, as far as I remember, as far as I've used them, they usually are, even though they're still low code, but they look and feel a bit more techy. And kind of, that it kind of scares away some of the people who are not used to it. From my own personal experience, I can say that Power Automate is easy to get into for finance and accounting people, for sure. It's easy to start. Then, if you want to build advanced flows, you still need some computer science understanding and stuff like that. But the entry is easier to make.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. Because I did 2 or 3 production level bots I have built in using Power Automate desktop. So, but for me, I come from a .NET background, so eventually it was easy. But compared to other RPA tools, I didn't face any challenges in terms of usability. I didn't had a read through of that stuff. I just launched the tool and started building it. So it was self-explanatory. The actions, whether you talk about actions and the flow.
Yeah.